Hey everybody, happy Saturday for you, for you, something like that. I don't know. Hope everybody's doing well today. Let's shrink that a little bit. You don't need to see that much of me in your face. I hope everybody, like I said, hope everybody's having a great Saturday. I have to say right off the bat, I almost canceled the show today. I had a death in the family last night, but it was kind of a rough night. But the show goes on. I need this for a little bit of therapy. Needed to see my peeps. I'm always looking forward to talking to Katie, so I certainly didn't want to do that. So here we are. The show must move on. So thank everybody for coming in here tonight and making me feel better with everything. So it's always fun seeing you. I know you guys are smiling over there, smiling or laughing or whatever. So you guys are just awesome. I love being around you guys. Speaking of being around you guys, see the segue I did there? Crossing Realms Conference is coming up. That is coming up what's today's date? It's little more than a month away. Crossing Realms on September 19th and 20th. Make sure you get your tickets. They're going fast. There are a limited amount of tickets because of fire code. So get those before we cut them off. So we have a great list of speakers. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. So I am looking forward to it, and hope to see as many of you guys in chat as we can. So anyway, we have a fantastic show tonight. Miss Katie Paige is going to be on here joining me. You know what? Let's just bring her up right now. She is thumbing through something real quick. Let's wait for her to get ready. There she is. Hi, Katie.
Hi there, Paul. I'm so sorry to hear about the death in the family. That's tough.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It was a shock, but it is what it is. It's going to be sad for a little bit, but things will be okay. But hey, I'm very happy to have you here as a very special guest, and congratulations on kind of rebooting your podcast, Rocky Mountain Ranch Research Podcast.
Well, thank you.
Tell us when you're on and where we can find you and everything.
Yeah, so I started out, I was on KGRA for a while, and then I'm still going to co-host with Jason Gilmat with UAP Studies podcast. And then I had this wild idea. I'm going to take my show on YouTube and just get out in the field. But, I'm still going to do that from time to time. But I thought, I really miss that connection. Like you said, you kind of get your tribe and your people. And I like the back and forth and the questions and talking with other people in the field. So I decided to do Rocky Mountain Ranch Research podcast. It's going to be live every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 9 to 10 Pacific or Eastern. So yeah, it's fun. Awesome. We had Ron Murphy. I just noticed your conference. I'm like, oh, Ron's going to be there because
Ron's going to be there.
Conference. Yep. Yeah, that looks like a fun one.
He's going to be there.
Cool graphics.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. And before you kind of rebooted this, you were all over I don't know about all over the country, but all over the mountain zone area. And I would assume that would take a lot out of you to, travel that much and get all that content and be just a lot of work to do. So it's awesome that you're back into it. And, if anybody goes on over there and watches, I have the link in the show notes.
Thank you.
You do a ton of research, and you are very good at this, and you know an awful lot about everything that you talk about. So that very, very kudos to you on doing such a great job.
Well, thank you. Well, in the paranormal world, there's really nothing better than going on location, because there's an energy you pick up, right? So like when I reinvestigate, Tony and I reinvestigate the Carl Higdon case, being, Medicine Bow, Wyoming wasn't too far of a drive for us. It's like, it's worth making that trip to go out there just to kind of feel and see the terrain. And, in that case, Carl Higdon was a famous case from 1974 outside of Laramie, Wyoming in Medicine Bow. And he had a really interesting encounter, but it was, for miles and miles you're driving and it's wide open space. And I'm like, well, this kind of seems unusual. Like it doesn't really match the story. But then you get to the location of where he encountered Asa One and this whole thing with a box, and he was elk hunting. And then you realize, oh wow, this is very similar to Rocky Mountain Ranch. So it's so great when you can, but it's time and money and hotels, and it's a lot of effort to do that. But I still try to do that whenever it's possible, because it's really important
it does add up, and the time driving to and from wherever, I'm sure things aren't that close, and like I said, it adds up. And it's still like this. It's really good to sit down and connect with somebody. I'm in St. Louis, you're out in Colorado. It's brings us all together, and it's still great to talk to people all over the country and world, really, on this kind of platform. Before we get going, I want to thank Mickey G for the $5. Appreciate it, Mickey. Thank you so much, my friend. And Kelly Sandiford, thank you for gifting 5 more members. Thank you so much. All right, let's switch that back over. And T-Bone, wow, thank you so much, buddy. Good to have you back in chat. It's been a few minutes since you caught it live, so I'm glad you're back here. Hey, Jason. Let's see. Where do I want to start with this? I know I want to talk about Skippy, and you were on. But before we do that, Skippy the horse, as you can see the poster behind you, we can talk about that here in just a second. You were on Beyond Skinwalker Ranch last season, and now again this season. First off, 3 seasons?
3 seasons. Yeah, 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. How did I miss this?
You gotta go back and check out the second one.
I know I've seen them all, but I guess 3 years.
Here's a little bit of behind the scenes information for your viewers. They filmed season 2 and 3 at the same time. So
really?
Initially, I thought they were going to do 2 episodes, kind of like for season 3, they had 2 episodes with Chris Bledsoe. And so I thought they were going to do the 2 episodes for season 2, but they split it in half. So, the 3rd season, my sister came on with me for that one, and she had to wait a whole other year for that to air.
So they filmed it a year before, right?
Yeah, right. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I don't know why they did it.
Same thing with Skinwalker Ranch. They filmed that a year in advance. But either way, how did you get hooked up with Beyond Skinwalker?
Interesting story. It's been, going on 15 years now of just kind of realizing anybody, because before it was known as the Rocky Mountain Ranch, it was known as the Clearview Ranch. My sister, my family, and I never knew anybody knew anything about it until I started asking questions about what all that was back in the day. Bought the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, found the Colorado. I'm like, oh my God, that's the ranch from my childhood. Learned about Leo Sprinkle, and then got all the documents, and it was a rabbit hole. So after that, pre-COVID, I went to the ranch. It's gated now, and they have a box in the front, and I just left a note explaining who I was, the connection to the ranch. And then, but they didn't know anything about, so they called me and said, hey, yeah, we'd be open, but they didn't know anything about the history, right? And I didn't know how long they'd been there. And then COVID shut everything down. And I'm like, I'm not going to call these people on the phone and just lay all this heavy stuff on them. I wanted to meet them for lunch in person. Well, during the 2 years, kind of was basically 2 years, we're all kind of in lockdown or whatever. History Channel got wind of the story and contacted the family. And I was like, what? So really? Yeah. And then it was agreed upon with Beyond Skinwalker that the first time I ever met. So part of the agreement to be on the show was you're not going to talk to Greg or Chris or Nicole that live there now and had lived there for over 30 years until cameras are rolling, because they wanted that to be. So the season 1, episode 1, that is legit the first time I've ever meeting them, being there, remembering, and they wanted that for the show. And I give them credit for that because I think that's super important. Likewise, in season 3, when I had to kind of convince my sister to go, because and this is one of the questions I've always had about the phenomenon. Like, why does it seem to attach to, like, the hitchhiker phenomenon seemed to attach more to me than my big sister. I don't know if it was an age difference. I don't know if it because I was more open to it, more like I was plugged into it more and paid more attention, and she didn't want it. So I feel like that might be true. Like our intention and our our involvement kind of opened some doors, maybe, you know, good, bad, or otherwise. So my sister was a little hesitant to go back. She's 6 years older. So when I'm 9, 10, and 11 on the ranch during the years, you know, she's 14, 15, 16. And she went to the high school prom out there and went to the ranch
Wow.
after prom and had a really scary event. So she kind of really shoved it more than I did. So I'm like, but you know, you know, we should face it together. We're adults now. We can, you know, when we're older, we can
Right.
sit on the front porch and talk about our, you know, us doing this. And so she did, and I'm glad she did. And so for season 3, the crew on Beyond Skinwalker had the same conversation with both my sister and I on, do you guys want to go together for the first time with Chris back to the ranch, or should we separate you and take Chris separately? And we all decided, but the you know, ultimately Beyond Skinwalker has the final say. They chose to have Chris go by herself, and I'm really glad they did, because we had never been back together as sisters. So it was really cool. I get to see it when you guys see it for the first time, and to see her go to the landing site and to go, you know, what a lot of people don't realize, they filmed like where I had the box encounter, and my sister also had a box encounter. So they had filmed all that, and it was really interesting to see her go to all these same locations and have the same types of memories that I had, because it reconfirmed. In the show, they mentioned that like Chris and I didn't talk about it very much. And that is true, because when I was 11 years old, right at the tail end of all this stuff, my sister moved out, and pretty quickly after that moved to Gillette, Wyoming, and started her family. So it wasn't like something we talked about very often. We'd bring it up maybe on occasion, but we were told never to talk about it. So we shoved it down. So it was really interesting to kind of see that play out. And you can see the emotion in my sister too, which, by the way, is her birthday today.
Yep.
So happy birthday,
Happy
Chris.
birthday, Chris.
Happy birthday, Chris. The day Elvis died, I was at Girl Scout camp when Elvis died on the 16th. So I always remember when Elvis Presley died, because he died on my sister's birthday.
Oh, today's Elvis. Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And we were sitting around Girl Scout camp singing Elvis Presley songs, and then it's like, oh, he dies. What's interesting too, so my sister and I are texting, like, have you seen the episode yet? And we're texting, she hadn't. And I was hoping that they wouldn't put my medical incident in that episode where I'm like, I'm in pain, because I was legitimately having like a medical issue. But my sister's text, she goes, what I didn't tell you is why I was having that, she was having that too. Not to the degree I was, but she didn't want to speak up about it. So she was having the same kind of symptoms. I mean, I was like pale, my blood pressure, I have naturally low blood pressure, but my blood pressure shot up. I'm like shaking. It was painful, like 10,000 knives on my shoulders. And what they don't show on that episode, and it shocked me, was that Hillary is a sound person for Beyond Skinwalker, and she had just put brand new batteries in all of our microphones. So as we're sitting there getting ready for that night Skywatch, which I was super excited about, that's why I was trying to tough it out. Like I was really excited about doing that. And what they didn't show was my battery went from 100 to 50. And then Paul walks me back to the barn, which was like 150 yards or something, and my battery went from 50 to nothing. So complete battery drain.
Really?
Everybody else has stayed at 100%. I'm like, why didn't they put that in the episode? I have no idea, but they didn't.
Yeah,
but there's more to the story.
That's kind of weird. That's really a bizarre encounter to where it just drains your battery. I mean, it happens all the time, but it'd be kind of neat to include that. And, you know, you could see, we're talking about the TV show Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. It's on the History Channel.
Yes.
I can't remember which. Okay, on the History Channel. You can find it on Hulu, YouTube TV, all your basic TVs, networks, or what streaming platforms or whatever. So go back and watch it. That was back in one of the first episodes this season, I believe. I can't remember which one. But you could see Katie just, you know, I don't want to say almost shut down, but you could see you're visibly shaken. You can tell you're hurting. And I mean, for them to stop production like that, that's a pretty big deal. And they rushed you out and got you. And I mean, that's crazy that your sister was feeling the same thing. And you mentioned in the show that growing up, she was your protector. So,
sure.
I mean, nobody else got any of this, did they? just you two.
Yeah, just us two. And, that's the other thing, for your listeners, what I thought all my life, basically, I thought all the things that happened on the ranch were kind of isolated to the 60-acre ranch, but it was
Mhm.
really the whole county of Elbert County and outlying counties. So kind of the whole Palmer Divide area, which is kind of similar, to the like the Dulce Basin. Well, I can't think of the name of it right now. And the Uinta Basin. What is that canyon by the Dulce Basin? Anyway, but yeah, so there's certain elements that are kind of similar. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And of course, that's where Linda Moulton Howe, we had the rash of cattle mutilations, and
Right.
all of that seemed to tie together. And when we get to Snippy the horse, what I thought was Snippy the horse was one of the very first, before viral was viral, um,
Mhm.
animal deaths that made world news in 1967. So it's an
Mhm.
old case. And I happened to meet the King family, who, is Nellie's great, great, great nephew. And they have the Snippy event coming. We'll talk about that later too. But what I thought was just a horse mutilation, when Tony Angiola, really, he's the one who did the really heavy lifting on all the research. I mean, pulling everything that was ever written about this case. There's so many comparisons and similarities to the Rocky Mountain Ranch that, like, on a daily basis, I was like, you're kidding me, you're kidding me, you're
Yeah.
kidding me, that kind of thing. So I'm really happy, and we'll kind of get into how that all transpired, but I'm really happy we reopened that case, because I had no idea that the San Luis Valley had so many similarities to the Rocky Mountain Ranch, or of Elbert County. So
And really, ever since the TV show Skinwalker, the Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch came along, we're hearing things. There's the Marley, I think it's Marley Woods Ranch here in Missouri, other ranches or other locations around the world. Really, I think it's just crazy that there are a lot of similarities in a lot of different places.
yeah.
So it just kind of makes you wonder what's going on. And getting back to Beyond Skinwalker, the first time you were on, I believe. So they had, I guess you guys were set up in like a porch area, and they had radio equipment that they were going to broadcast your voice into the house. And somebody else was talking into the house. Nothing happened. They had all their equipment going on. No, the levels all stayed the same. But tell everybody what happened when they gave you the microphone and you started talking.
Yeah, so that was an interesting experiment, and it was kind of, as we're filming, it was on the spot. The producer's like, "Hey, we should try to have Katie do this too." But so one of the scariest night on the ranch, it was the boys' mother's birthday. I did not live on the ranch full time. I think had I lived there full time, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
My mom was dating the guy that owned the ranch, so his two younger sons lived with us during the week, and we'd drive back and forth on the weekends so the boys can see their mom and so forth. So spent time on the ranch, and every time something crazy happened, and I always heard about it throughout the week, but don't talk about it, don't talk about it. And so that one night, it was a boys' mother's birthday. The adults are all playing board games, and me and my sister and the three boys are hanging out in their back bedroom. And that's when the brightest light I'd ever seen, all the power goes out in the house, the hum sound starts up, and there was this disembodied weird electronic voice, which I'm not saying it's aliens or ETs. It could be plasma ball technology or some Black Access Project thing going on. But there was something that basically, we have allowed you to remain, that whole thing. Your friends will be instructed to remain silent concerning us. I don't know who the us is, but it was terrifying. And I got my full
Wow.
blown migraine, blah, 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 blah. So they were trying to recreate that in the room. They put a crystal radio. And so, the ham operators, no signal. And I'm just watching, nothing, nothing, nothing. And then I go like, "Hey, I'm back. Do you remember me?" And everything goes crazy. I was like, holy moly. And they repeated it 3 or 4 times. They repeated it more times than they show in the episode. But again, something else was happening that they didn't put in the episode. And it shocked me that they didn't put in the episode, because first of all, in the room where the crystal radio was, Travis Taylor saying they were like strange clicks, almost like Morse code type of clicking. But also in
Yeah.
they had like a CB radio kind of thing down on the shelf right there. We were getting like things about the Vietnam War coming through. I heard Vietnam War. I heard we're back,
That's
like
weird.
almost like EVPs, like we're back or something like that. I'm like, oh my gosh. And we all heard it in the room. It was an audible EVP. It was that strong. And
That-
then on the CB radio was Vietnam War stuff. I'm like, what is happening? Another thing they didn't put in that night, or maybe they did. I'd have to go back and rewatch it. But one of the rockets they launched was giving us coordinates that was not right. It was actually giving coordinates near a nuclear base in Montana by one of the missile silos. And I don't remember if that was in that.
I think it was. I'm pretty sure it
Was it?
was.
Okay. Okay.
I remember seeing that, and on Skinwalker Ranch they do that too, and the coordinates are all messed up, all jacked up too. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's very weird similarities. BJ, Morse code type clicking. Wow. She sent me a video that had strange lights in the sky, and there was that same clicking that she didn't hear when she was filming it. She didn't even notice it until I pointed it out to her, and so maybe that's something from whatever was out there. I mean, who knows? I don't know that we'll ever know.
Yeah, but that's the frustrating part, isn't it? We all want answers. Then we can all retire. I don't know
exactly.
what we do.
Exactly.
Talk about
So then, the first season you were on there as a solo with Beyond Skinwalker Ranch at your old at the ranch. And now fast forward to now, they do that same experiment and your sister's there with you. And did she get the reaction from the house as well?
She did. And what's fascinating too, so we both got reactions, but I'm not a technical person, so I don't really know how ham radio and all these gadgets work. But I do remember the crew saying we both got reactions, but they got reactions in a different way. So I thought that was interesting. And what is interesting about that, and of course nobody can know this because I'm doing it in my mind, but when my sister's communicating the whole time, I'm like kind of telepathically trying to call them in my head. And so another thing that didn't make it the episode, which I was like, wow, my sister and I got to sit down with the crew and have a review of the UAPs or anomalies that we're seeing because they had the Skydap going while she's doing that radio experiment. It could be 2 shooting stars, but even if it was 2 shooting stars, which I've never seen a duel in, just me and my sister's reaction. So while my sister's on the radio at that same time of, when it had that cold the temperature inversion, 2 shooting stars, like the 2 sisters comes right over the ranch like this. And me and my sister, I have a screenshot of it because we were like, oh, like it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And 2, like I'll see shooting stars, but not 2 like that. And it really, to her and I, it was like, oh, it represented the 2 sisters, but they didn't put it in the episode. And I'm like, why not? Just our reaction alone would have been good. Because we're like, oh my God.
They could do another show beyond Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah. Bonus clips. Like they did season 1 bonus clip.
You mentioned I think it's UFODAP with the technology that they use. It's something that scans the sky, and anything that's not an airplane gets identified as a UAP or UFO or whatever. So it's not necessarily saying that it's a UFO alien. It's just something that they can't identify as an airplane. And real quick, you mentioned the landing site. Can you explain that as well? Because I think that's where something landed. I don't remember.
Well, we don't know if anything landed there or if there's something underground. And I think it's season 2. They had the guys from Oak Island out there, and they did a scan right there. And it was strange because they got data to a certain depth, and then it just went black. And that guy, I can't remember his name, but he was so nice. He was a really nice guy. And he's like, I've never seen anything like that before. But the memory for both my sister and I was a very vivid one, and it was very innocent. I mean, it was just one of those weekends we were at the ranch. Nothing to do. You're bored. We're flipping the Frisbee. That's what you do in the 70s. And we both, it was like wet, heavy snow on the ground. You probably get it in Missouri too. It's like spring snow in Colorado. And we're like, this is so flipping weird. There's just dry dirt, no weeds, no nothing, just this perfect circle of dry dirt and wet, heavy snow on the outside. Fast forward all these years later, come to find out there were 2 of those on the ranch. They measured them. The one my sister and I remember was 75 feet in diameter, which is significant because it was even measured and found at the Snippy site. But nothing grew. And in the report, the APRO report, and APRO stands for the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization, and they're the ones that, like right here, they're the ones that investigated the case. And in here, they talk about that outside of the snowless circle were drops of blood in the snow when the investigators were out there. And there were 3 PhDs out there. And I'm like, holy smokes. But there was one also reported in the back of the ranch house. Now, my first thought, I used to be the MUFON Mutual UFO Network state director. And so as an investigator, my first thought was, well, maybe there was an old missile silo sitting there, or a building that used to sit there, or something that would cause that to happen. But there wasn't. There was never anything there. And when I walked up to that site with Nicole, and that reaction with the dog, that was like, they refilmed that because we're walking, just filming, and then the dog reacted like that and took off. And I'm like, what? Because they had 3 dogs. The one dog in particular will not go to that landing site. And so they're like, we got to get this on film.
Really?
And I'm glad they did. Yeah. So you see that dog, he will not go there. He'll go anywhere else on that ranch property, but not there. Now, is that
That's
an
bizarre.
electric, anomaly or something like that? I don't know. But I don't know if something landed there, if something's buried underground, but it is a strange place. And then I think it was after they filmed season 1, Tony and I went out with Ben Moss. We went out to the ranch, got permission from the owner, and we wanted to fly our drone. Cause I'm like, part of me was like, there's so much stuff that happened, the hum and all these things. I'm like, I gotta redo some of these experiments myself for my own confirmation. And we put the drone up right over the landing site, and that thing went up. It was fully charged and came down within 2 minutes. And what's strange about that is we plugged it in the car to recharge it. It recharged like super fast. We put it back up and it was fine. So whatever this is, it seems transient in nature, like it moves or shifts or something. It's strange.
That's bizarre. all the while you were talking about the circle, the odd circle in the ground, I remember watching some TV show they did. I can't remember if it's I don't know. I can't remember the name of the lake in Piedmont. I can't remember if it's Clearwater Lake or something else in Piedmont, Missouri, that there's reports of UFOs going in and out of the lake. And there's a house near that lake that there is a perfect, I don't remember the dimensions of the circle, but a perfectly round circle where nothing will grow. And they can't figure out why. And the radiation levels were different on that circle. So it sounds kind of similar to what the landing site is on the Rocky Mountain Ranch.
Yeah, you see it time and time and time again. And I'm so horrible. I feel bad. That's why I didn't want to mention this, but we had a guest on UAP Studies podcast who did his dissertation on UFOs. And so this guy, you know how much work that is to do that, to get your PhD. And you can go to UAP Studies and find the episode, but he, in one of his bubble graphs, was looking at, just your typical commonalities, case after case after case. And one of them was dish-shaped craft. One of the telltale signs is a 75-foot diameter circle. So to find it in the Snippy case, I was like, you're kidding me. But also I know there's been other like lake sightings with these weird circles or things, where things don't grow. And in Investigation Alien, which was on Netflix with George Knapp, it's the very first episode. It's my favorite episode of that series for obvious reasons, because they kind of hit on the animal mutilation stuff. But there's a rancher there from Oregon, and like he's a 5th generational rancher, has had several mutilations, actually saw a craft over his ranch with one of these large circles, 75-foot circle where nothing grew, and shot at the thing. And he said it just disappeared in an instant. I'm like, holy crap, there it is again. So we hear that over and over. And like you mentioned at the top of the show, Paul, this is not just the United States. This is in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in other places. Many countries have the same phenomena happening. So I don't know, just like the crop circles, that's kind of an area I never got really into because like so many of us were like, oh, it's just dudes with boards.
Yeah.
Some of them
who are
might
bored
be
one
fun.
night.
Yeah, they're bored, get a few boards, make some crop circles, but some of them are so dang intricate. Like there's no, you know, so some of them have to be legit.
Yeah.
And it's just like when you do like the sand and you put the vibrations and they make those cool patterns and things. Maybe that's what's happening energetically with the earth. And it does that. I don't know what the answer is, but you know, and then of course they have the broken nodes and all that stuff. So there are telltale signs of actual real crop circles, but I'm wondering if it's a similar kind of phenomenon. I don't know.
Could very well be. And you know, putting, and I don't want to get anywhere near politics or anything on this show, but if certain countries would just put their political views aside and maybe share information regarding this or whatever, maybe we could come closer to finding an answer as to what some of this stuff is. So that's it. I'm off my soapbox.
That'd be nice.
Wouldn't it be nice if everybody would just get along?
Yeah.
But anyway, so you mentioned Skippy.
Snippy.
You know, I found this Snippy. I keep saying Skippy. That's why BJ texted me. Snippy. I'm thinking Skippy peanut butter. Food on my mind again.
You're not alone. A lot of people do that.
Snippy. I know it's Snippy. It's Snippy. I saw this. I think it might have been on your podcast where you went to. No, it was on Small Town Monsters, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes. Where Shannon LeGros was doing an episode where she was talking to the gal who has Snippy the horse, the skeleton remains of Snippy the horse. And I just thought that was such a fascinating topic because you always hear about cattle mutilations and all this stuff. And I know, I just don't listen, BJ. Come on. You should know this by now. Where was I going with this? Oh, I think it's even you hear cattle mutilations, but you don't hear much about horse. So and this is such a cool subject. So here is Skippy.
Snippy.
Right now. God.
You can see Snippy. Yeah, you can see Snippy at the UFO Watchtower in Moscow, Colorado, there in the San Luis Valley. Judy Messelin owns the UFO Watchtower. I just love her to death. So yeah, his remains went through a whole plethora of different encounters, and he ended up in a boxcar. And so he's on display there. And what's kind of important about that, we were able to take really good pictures of his skeleton because one of the very first things, you know, in the late 80s, Snippy turned from a 3-year-old male gelding colt into a female horse named Lady. And so this was a big controversy and an unknown. And for over 30 some years, the APRO files were not accessible. They were basically missing for all intents and purposes. And that the APRO, just like the Rocky Mountain Ranch, they were the ones to investigate Snippy along with, you know, the Condon Committee and others. But all the photos and records and documents were all with APRO. So they go missing. And for reasons we don't understand, Burl Lewis decides to tell like Linda Moulton Howe and Chris O'Brien that no, it wasn't Snippy. Snippy's Lady. It wasn't a male. It was a female, blah, blah, blah. So Kerry King finds me. We meet. He's having his big Snippy event August 22nd through the 24th. So it's just right around the corner. If you happen to be in the area, you should try and make it out to that. Right there it is. There's a lot of great speakers there. And I love the events that he's doing out there now. He's going to make it an annual event every year. So if you can't make it this year, make plans for next year. It's usually end of August. They chose to do it on, you know, moonless nights. So you can't get better. It's a dark sky territory, and like Mark D'Antonio will be there, and they'll be sky watching and things like that. Dr. Shock will be there. The Navajo Rangers are going to be there, and many others. You can go to Snippy 2025 to see more information about it. But they're going to do this annually, and so last year when we were there, we got to talking about, was it lady, was it Snippy? Now, this was before Dave Marler acquired the Apro files at the National UFO Historical Record Center out there in Rio Rancho. So to make a long story short, I go out to visit as soon as he opened the doors to go see what I can find out of the original Apro files on the Rocky Mountain Ranch. Because, I'm a little, selfish. It's kind of the case, right? And what Dave does, I'm sitting there researching, and he plops down just stacks of folders like that thick of the Snippy case and photographs and auto recordings that haven't been heard in over 30 some years of Nellie and Ben Phillips, the sheriff, and just all this mind-blowing information. And one of the first photos that I was like on texting Carrie right away was the only known picture of Snippy alive with Mother Lady. And what I loved about these photos, and there was a lot of them, there are, so anybody can go visit and see these things in person. But back in the day when you'd go to like get your film developed and you'd get your pictures, you would write on the pictures, like this one. And so there was no doubt at that point. So let's go to the one where you see a big gray horse with a little Snippy colt. We'll start there.
Okay, let's take that off so I can.
But I will talk about that one. And why you're finding that, one of the first things we learned was there were 4 horses pastured on the King Ranch. And what wasn't really known, there was a black horse named Smokey. There was Snippy, the 3-year-old gelding colt, Lady, a dapple gray, and Sheba, another brown horse. Well, Smokey, the big black horse, was killed the week before Snippy. And at the time, they thought, well, maybe he just got bit by a rattlesnake because there was a little swelling in his hip. But he was 14 hands high and a 1,200-pound horse. A rattlesnake won't kill a horse like that, not that big, only if it gets it right on the snout or the throat, because the snout will swell up. So Smokey's death remains a mystery as well. What else? There was a lot of different pictures of calves and cows that were going blind, that were having strange hoof growth like radiation. And then there's a ranch next door to the King Ranch that were having multiple animal deaths of cow. And so much so they named it the Dead Cow Ranch. So it wasn't just Snippy in the valley. Within this year's 1967, I think there were 3 other horse mutilations too. None as profound and with the evidence that Snippy had, but there was a lot of animal deaths in the valley. To this day, there's still animal mutilations in the valley.
Wow. Here's that picture of, I think that's it, right?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one with the document. So it's like one of those pictures in a folder, and I love it because that document basically said, here is the 8x10, and it states right in that document from the date that this is Lady, Snippy's mother, and little 3-year-old. Or that picture, I think Snippy was a month old, and he was born in Estes Park, Colorado, by where the Stanley Hotel is. So that's where Snippy was born. And nobody ever knew that before. We had the whole provenance of how Snippy, where he was. He was born in Estes Park, and then he was pastured in Denver for a couple years, and then moved to the San Luis Valley. But that's his mom, Lady, right there. So it was really cool to kind of set the record straight and get that right, get the name right, the sex of the horse right, and everything.
And by the way, I wrote the name Snippy on a Post-it note, and I'm posting it on my monitor so I can read it and know that it's Snippy, not Skippy.
We kind of speculate when reading the reports and the documents. So Nellie King lived with her mother Agnes, and Agnes King was in her 80s. And they describe Snippy as being very playful and just, like kind of proud, a proud pony. And Agnes King compared Snippy to Jackie Kennedy. Because you got to remember, 1967, Jackie O is really popular at the time. And of course, Jackie O is a female. So she's quoted as saying, oh, that Snippy's just like Jackie Kennedy. So that might be kind of where the confusion of the sex started. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a thought. But we don't know why Burl changed it later. It might have been that he just wanted the story to go away, so he was going to muddy the waters. We're not sure. Because he also stated that, well, Snippy was a horse I rode, which is not true either, because Snippy, he might have been referring to Lady. Snippy was never saddled or shod. Snippy in the document said he was only taught to halt and lead. And the week after his mutilation, he was said to be trained to be saddled. So there was so much
Really?
information in this. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Amy Creel brings up a little question. Seems like most animal mutilations target females.
That's true with cows and also a lot of calves. And we don't know, I've heard many different theories on animal mutilations, whether it's the copper in the blood. And we do know they take the soft tissue, the eye, the tongue, the genital regions, certain organs, blood drained. But what's really interesting about the Snippy case from 67, this was really the first case. So in the audio recordings, you can hear Nellie and Burl and the others on the King Ranch talk about all the commonalities we know now is just common, like, oh yeah, the cone of silence, everything fell silent. No other animals would touch it. So there was a really cool map of the crime scene, basically. And they even put on there that you could see coyote droppings and coyote prints because it had rained. So you could see all the footprints around Snippy. And the other animals would not go near Snippy. High radiation readings outside of a circumference of where Snippy lay, but as you got closer to Snippy, they went back to normal, which is opposite of how it should be.
Yeah, you'd think.
There's strange thing. Snippy's bones, when they found him, they were like bleach white, as if he'd been laying there for years. And then a week later, they turned bright pink, and then a week later, they turned black. So really strange holes in the ground. There were these strange animal prints that come out of nowhere, disappear. Now they don't look like Sasquatch, but they look strange. At first I'm like, maybe they can be bear, but the stride was wide. And what's weird is there's no other prints. Like if it was a bear, and I think you have that picture too of that weird footprint around Snippy. Where did the bear go? Where did the other prints go? So why do they just vanish? And there are a lot of cases that now, this is a picture here. This is, I believe it was a year later. They put a post where Snippy lay, and you can see just like the snowless circles where nothing grew, that's where Snippy lay.
That's
a year and a half later, and they put a pole. Yeah. And it stayed like that for a few years, like 3 years. Nothing would grow where Snippy laid.
Let me see if I can find that picture.
Yeah. You could just go through them and I can talk about them if you want to.
Okay. Let's do that. Okay. So we got, it'll be easier. We have this one already.
Yeah, that one's great. That's Lady and Snippy. Yeah, I love that. Mm-hmm. And that's Burl, Lady, and Snippy. Again, more documents stating that that's Snippy and Burl and Lady, the mother. That's the book cover and back. And it was so cool. Linda Howe, she was great. Oh, so there's one of the only pictures we have of Smokey, the horse that died the week before. And that's Nellie Lewis, who owns Snippy, and Mother Agnes, the one I was just talking about. And the horse that Agnes is holding is Sheba. So those were the 4 horses. Like I said, Smokey died the week before. That left 3 horses. And that right there is Sheba. And then we had Lady, the big gray that can't be confused with Snippy, and then Snippy.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Now here's this. These were in the photos. Sick calf in Harry King Corral. Black Angus bull and calf were blinded approximately the time of Snippy's death. So that's very interesting. And another thing that's really important to talk about here is right around Snippy's death, there were these smashed Chico brushes and kind of split, right? And in one of these Chico brushes, Nellie King finds this weird, what she describes as a tool. And she said it was like a skin-colored gizzard-shaped thing. And she picks it up with 2 sticks and starts poking at it. And this green ooze comes out of it. And she describes it in the audio tapes and the documents and everything. Well, the person who was with her when she found this strange tool, and there was, tufts of Snippy's hair on it and everything, well, it burned her hands for like an hour until she washed them. But Ernest Wellington was with her when she discovered this tool in the Chico brush. Ernest Wellington passes away a week later. Now, we don't know if it's related to that. In fact, his daughter reached out to us. She lives in Australia now. And I asked her about that. I'm like, do you think your father's death had anything to do with this strange tool you found around the Snippy site? And, some people believe it was connected and others don't. But to me, that's a pretty, like, he wasn't sick or he didn't have, cancer or anything. He just dies a week later. And then we have animals
Wow.
going blind. Human Harry King went blind. So there's a lot of really scary migraine headaches, heart palpitations, things like that. People being rushed to the hospital. Harry King, nothing's wrong with him. He checks out fine. At the same
Yeah.
time, they're having the hum sounds and seeing strange things fly over the valley. People for years, even before the Snippy site, would see craft fly in and out of Mount Blanca right there at the base of the valley. So a lot of strange things like that going on.
So you mentioned the animals going blind. Would that be from the radiation? And because on I think it was earlier this season on Skinwalker Ranch, they had a cow that was going crazy, and they looked closer, and its eyes were all white.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, was that something similar to what's happening with these other animals?
Yeah, very much so. I that's why it's so important to take a look at these old historic cases, because we know so much now, more now than we did then. And to take a second, there was even a box encounter sighting out there in the valley. So all these things are really important. When they looked at this case originally, they weren't looking for cryptids, they weren't looking for boxes, they weren't looking for, radiation poisoning and different effects in all these other cases. So it's so important to go back and look at that. But yes, that's something I was just recently reading, going through some documents that I have, is there was a researcher, and the name escapes me, but back in the late 70s to early 80s, they were looking at hundreds of calves and cattle, and like your listener said, a lot of females, because there are a lot of female cattle that get mutilated, and they were finding you like they were tagged or marked ahead of time. So whether it's our own military tagging these animals, I personally have come to believe after all this time that it's maybe both, that maybe we have done some of them, meaning we, the military, CIA, Black Access Projects, maybe testing for mad cow disease, nuclear fallout. I know Christopher O'Brien mapped out like nuclear test sites and looked at the mutilations in connection to those. And I think that's probably true in some of the cases, but it certainly doesn't answer for all of them. Just like, the Millers out there in Trinidad, where you have them falling and landing in trees, and even Snippy, it had rained, so you could see even bird tracks. It mentioned there's no footprints, there's no truck prints, there's no nothing. And there's a map. If I will continue on, I'll tell you about that when we get to it.
Okay. All right.
Right, and just another Sheba lady.
Sheba lady.
Sheba lady.
Yeah,
This is
Sheba
Ellie
lady.
Lewis, Sheba lady. And I love these because of the confusion with the name. This one was like, oh my gosh. So in the reports, it said that Lady and Sheba were very friendly horses. They would come and take sugar cubes from your hand. They said after Snippy's mutilation, and they were with Snippy when this happened, they got skittish. You could see his tail down. They got afraid of anybody tried to take a picture of him. It would freak the horses out. They got really skittish. And this is a picture of Alice Richmond, one of the APRO investigators. It says, Lady, Snippy's mother, these two horses, Sheba and Lady, were the horses that were with Snippy in pasture when killed, only witnesses to Snippy's murder. So to see these were just unbelievable.
Yeah. If only animals could talk,
Yeah. Right.
Good thing dogs can't talk, because my dogs wouldn't shut up. Anyway.
Yeah, and this was a comparison. We kind of went a little crazy, and like we had the bones, tested to make sure they were male, and they are. But we just kind of matched. This is us kind of matching the patterns on Snippy's legs, and Snippy was an Appaloosa, part Appaloosa. So you can see on the photo where I think we have that photo in there. You can sort of see the Appaloosa spots on Snippy as well. So we were just kind of showing that, it's not Sheba. The coloring doesn't match on the legs. Yeah, this is the weird print. Yeah, isn't that strange? It doesn't look like a Sasquatch. I don't know, those ridges on it. It doesn't even. I've tried to compare it to bear, but again, where are the other prints? Where did the bear go? It's like there were only a few.
It kind of looks like a bear claw, but there's an awful lot of claws.
Yeah, I don't know. It's unusual. Again. Where did the other prints go? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And then
And they say in the report, I believe the report said it's in that I believe there was a 7-foot stride in between the prints, and a bear doesn't do that.
No.
So I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. There were strange cryptid, like platypus creatures seen out there as well at Lake Como. This was the McFedry boys. They were curious after, the story went viral. Cool Mustang there. They went out in the valley too. A lot of people. I mean, everybody was sky watching in the valley, and that was just a strange light that made the front page of the paper at the time.
Strange light, but cool Mustang.
Yeah, this is cool. This is Don Richmond, one of the APRO investigators, talking to Lonnie Zamora from the Lonnie Zamora case of Socorro, New Mexico, in 1964 case. And they, at the Socorro case, they took castings of the imprints of the craft seen there. And here they had imprints. They had these strange holes in the ground that weren't horse tracks or anything else. So they compared the tracks with castings and stuff. And that was cool to know. I never knew that about the case either. So here they are comparing the indentations, which, by the way, weren't really a match, but really cool that they at least did that.
So getting back to the prints, Barb had a question. How big were those bear-looking prints?
Yeah, I believe they said they measured like maybe 12 inches foot.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll double check that though. I want to be certain on that. But they were pretty large. They weren't little. Yeah, this was a map I was telling you about. So in the archives, when I pulled this out of the file, it's literally like this big. It's huge. I'm like, how do we get a picture of this thing? It's like, yeah, it was big that they took the time to do this. And you can see, they have the coyote droppings. And then here to the right and below Snippy, you see these little marks that look like a circle. Those are where, those right there. That's where Snippy was milling. So on another map, you could see the prints of the 3 horses that were still there because Smokey had died the week before. That's the other thing. So if you go to that one, that's a close-up of Snippy. You could see they put the Appaloosa spots on him, and you can see that they made sure they noted his back leg was broken. And you can see that in the photos as if, he was dropped. His back leg was broken. Yeah. Another thing that isn't reported and not well known about this case, his back left leg was also bare of flesh and hair, just like his head and neck. So that was really interesting as well. But it marked, also on that map, there were 3 fence posts that were just sheared off like butter right them. So right over here are the 3 fence posts. Up there at the top right where it's circled, that's where they found this tool and the Chico brush. Okay. So it was just a really well drawn out map of all the strange holes and the tools and all the evidence. And I had no idea there was that much evidence in this case. I was just like floored by all this. Yeah. See, there's some of the strange holes around the Chico brush, and they're not footprints. That I don't know what those were, but you could see the Chico brush is, split in half, just like at the Socorro site, and smashed and split in half.
Some kind of weird boreholes or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe something was testing. This was awesome to see. Yeah. So here you have, and the fact that they rode on these 2 is neat, but you have the 3 horses, Sheba, Lady, and Snippy, and it's like something was corralling these horses so they could see the tracks because it had rained, right? So they could see them very clearly. Then you could see 2 horses run off back to the ranch house, Sheba and Lady. You see Snippy milling, and then boom is dropped with no tracks in between. So he was picked up by something or someone and dropped.
The 3 tracks end right here. If you can see my arrow there.
Yep.
And then Snippy's clear over here. Wow.
Yep. Yeah. And the 2 other horses run back. And then after that event, they were spooked. They were never the same after that.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Wow. And then that's how Snippy was found.
So this one I wanted to include. Sorry for the graphic nature, people, but in this picture you could see how his back right leg is broken and his back left leg is bare, just like his head and neck. And at this point, his bones turned black. And we have pictures of him pink, and we have pictures of him white.
Okay. Let's get it off this picture. It's
another one, Lady and Sheba with Alice Richmond, just after the event, right? That's it, right in the pasture where Snippy was mutilated there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of, has anyone estimated how far Snippy, not Skippy, was dropped from?
Yeah, that's a really good question, T-Bone. In fact, so we're kind of sticklers, Tony Angiola and I, for like going through everything we could possibly dig up on this case. And that was one area where there were pretty wide discrepancies. Some of them said 25 feet, some of them said 250 feet. So, but it was, either or, it was away from where he milled. So it's not like he could have just flew over there. You know what I'm saying? But there was a discrepancy between investigators and audio recordings and things on that. So we chose to just kind of, like in the book, there's a lot of pictures in this book. This book is worth getting just to see these original pictures. And we just said, we're going to leave it as it was written at the time. So we talked about that one already. That's where he was. They put a stake in the ground. We got the opportunity to go back to try and find that. We couldn't find it, so I'm sure they removed that stake. But here, this is where it says 3 horses running as illustrated below. Ben King tracked these 3 horses, and the tracks went from one side of the pasture to the other. 2 horses continued on to the King Ranch. Snippy was found. See, this one says 250 from where the other 2 tracks led to the ranch. So this information related to APRO.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is the most, this picture right here was the one pretty, like, I think it was a week after Snippy was found. Again, you could see the bare back leg, the broken back leg. You could see his markings on his legs, but you could see the Appaloosa spots on this one.
Right here.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. And that's the last one we have.
Yeah, poor Snippy.
Wow, that's poor Snippy. How long was Snippy laying there until it was, I guess, safe to move or cleaned up? Or
yeah, Nellie wanted to make sure, like, I think there were the condom committee and others that wanted to take him, and she's like, no. That's why he kind of ended up where he did. He went through this whole provenance of where his bones went, but she's like, they just want the story to go away, and it's too important to just go away because there was just so much evidence with it. And they even did testing. So in the book, we have lab reports from, the green ooze. A lot of people don't know there were green ooze and exhaust marks, burn marks around the horse, holes, this strange tool, and on and on and on. And then you add the unfortunate death of Ernest Wellington and all of that information on top of it. It's just super sad, but something was going on out there. In full disclosure too, when I was really researching the San Luis Valley, because there were many sightings of strange craft and things in the valley even before, like in 1966, we have reports in before Snippy. But one thing I didn't realize is that area, NASA has used that area for a lot of their like moon landing testings and things like that because of the volcanic rock and the terrain. You have the great sand dunes right there. And I'm like, so isn't that interesting? Could that account for a portion of some of the unusual sightings or things in the valley? NASA being out there testing things. So I just thought that was interesting. I had never known that. And I've lived in the state for a long time and I never knew that. And to this day, they still use it. Yeah. Yeah.
And they will never come clean with, saying what's out there. So, I mean, I guess we'll never know. And Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot brought up a good point. Don't ask ChatGPT. The strangest thing about Snippy, you get locked with this. Your request was flagged as potentially violating our usage policy. Very interesting.
Why? I've never seen that before.
That's, I almost want to go over and try that.
I know. We're going to have to go try that now, Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. I mean, that's a frustrating thing for us, too. I mean, it's nobody's fault. And like Linda Moulton was so gracious because I was like hesitant. I'm like, Linda, because the kind of rumor of the name change and all that kind of started with her when she investigated, or interviewed Burl. And I didn't know how she was going to take it. And so we had a long conversation on the phone. And I'm like, look, you just went with what he told you. I mean, he's the guy. Of course you're going to believe him. And you didn't have access to all the photos and the original documents and all that. And she, like on the back of the book, the quote from Linda, and I love it. And then she was so sweet and sent me some books and stuff. She said, cheers to a lot more truth about the universe we're in, full of consciousness and life. And then she wrote she wrote a little letter in the front of the book from Linda Howe here. Letter from Linda. So I was so happy about that because I was so worried about it for a while. Same with Chris O'Brien, and unfortunately we lost Chris O'Brien, but same thing happened to him. I mean, he only went with what he knew at the time. And Tony and I just recently did a presentation in Alamosa at the library, and that was awesome. It was a small group, but there was a lot of people who knew Chris O'Brien and, old timers that knew of Snippy and remembered the event. And they were so thankful and just super kind about like, hey, I'm just presenting, like, now we have access to the pictures and the files, and we need to set the record straight on this case because it's an important case. It's one of the very, very first recognized animal mutilation death cases. And you mentioned too, you don't hear a lot about horse, but even Linda Howe's A Strange Harvest in Elbert County, there were reports of horse mutilations, dog, sheep, cow. And talking with Paul Sinclair in the UK, there were kangaroos. I've even heard of mutilations in like sea creatures. So, it targets not just cow. And unfortunately, human.
And you also kind of wonder, I mean, this was back in 1967.
Right.
How many animal mutilations were even before this? I mean, UFOs have been supposedly spotted way back in history.
Yeah.
How long have these animals been being, I guess, abducted and mutilated and dropped back down to Earth?
Yeah, probably longer than they've been reported. And it also makes me wonder too, like, we report and we recognize our animals that are domesticated or that we're raising for food. But what about elk and deer and rabbit and raccoons and just animals we don't track? It makes me wonder about that too.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. Very, very interesting. I just find ever since I first heard of Snippy, I just am fascinated with it. And then I discovered all your information on it. And I'm just like, wow, this is just really, really cool stuff. Really, to me, it's just the fact that there's hardly any blood, if any, around these
completely
animals.
Drained.
It's just, it's, and where does it go? What are they doing it for? And all these, the organs are being removed. Why? What?
Right. There was a black tar around Snippy. They had that black tar tested. They had the tool tested. So all that's in the book. And like even the cover of the book, this was from the original Apro files. This was an original drawing. So you could see the artist's name here and the one on the back too. So I'm like, oh, we have to put that on the cover. Unfortunately, we can't run ads for the book to sell the book because it's too graphic. So, if you could support us, it's worth having the copy and having the photos, but it's also on Kindle, an audio book, and it's in approval. The hardback book's coming out too, so you'll be able to get it in hardback soon. But yeah, it's such an important case, and I'm so happy. We spent 7 months on this. That's all we did for day in and day out, and we lived and breathed, and to work with the actual King family on it too. How cool is that? So it was really a collaborative effort. Yeah.
And you could go to Amazon.
Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you, Pam. Awesome. All right, let's shift gears a little bit here, and talk a little bit of cryptids. Have you come across cryptids?
Yeah. So again, that's the thing with these high strangeness locations. That's just the trifecta of all these different things. And even the mutilations for the longest time, I'm like, I don't even need to research that because, Chuck Zukowski, Chris O'Brien, Linda Howe, they've got it covered. But at some point you can't ignore it. Like, and now Beyond Skinwalker, I have other ranchers that are having mutilations, but the cryptids, that was like, how it is, ghosts over here, cryptids over here, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't even my wheelhouse. However, at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, many reports of Sasquatch. But what's really interesting about that is, and even my sister, I don't know if she talks about it on the episode or not. I think she does in her interview. And this was interesting to me because, again, I only saw it when you guys saw it. So they're at the bar. I think it's Paul is interviewing my sister, and she's talking about the bangs on the house during that night of the scary night of the voice.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot about the bangs on the house. But all through the report on the Rocky Mountain Ranch, these Sasquatch were seen like over by the barn, and I have memory of that. And I believe my sister had a Sasquatch encounter the prom night, but they were menacing. They were like, you know how Sasquatch are said to throw rocks and things? These things were
Yeah.
banging on the house. I don't know what that's about. Also, when I was with MUFON and I ran the MUFON Mars program, which is basically redacting all the old paper files. So there was over 10,000 files in there. And I had a team of 15 and we worked that for like 3 years. So we got to see all these cases. And one of them was the Ohiopyle, Pennsylvania creature case. And it had multiple witnesses, police, circles on the ground, animal deaths, and cryptids and Bigfoot. And just like at Skinwalker Ranch, they shot at one of these things and it just vanished. There's also strange bird sightings in Elbert County of these like pterodactyl type of birds or these strange phoenixes. And that first episode when we're in the back of the ranch house and the rocket guys are there and we're shooting the little rocket, because the idea was let's shoot the rocket and we're going to poke the hornet's nest. Just kind of, hey, we're here. And we're getting ready to shoot the second rocket. These guys like their rockets. Anyway, so we're getting ready to shoot their second rocket. And these rocket guys are on Skinwalker Ranch and they do the Beyond rockets. And this one particular guy, all of a sudden he like doubles over in pain. And it had happened to him before. Like it, for whatever reason, the phenomenon targets this guy. And while that's going on, we hear what sounded to me like a large bird, like a big, huge, and we're like, so much so that we took the crew back to try and see if we could see any evidence of it. That's how loud the bird flapping was. It wasn't like a hawk or an eagle. It was a big flapping of a bird. Couldn't find anything, so they didn't put it in or anything. But it was what was interesting to me about this guy. I'm like, so you get affected by something. I'm like, I have a question for you. I'm like, do you have any ties or your father or mother to the military? And he's like, well, why do you ask? And he goes, yeah, I do. And before he even can say it, I said it with him. I said, Navy? I see that so often. It's Navy number one. And then I hear Air Force, Army, and the Marines. But Navy people, I don't know if they target Navy families. ETs are looking. It would make sense to me if you were an extraterrestrial and you wanted to find out about humans and humanity. You would look at the military families and the military people because they're the ones that are warring, right? And so I'm like, that kind of makes sense because I hear it over and over and over and over again. Or if you're in Black Access projects, like the kids of these families are sometimes targeted, just like people in state hospital or mental institution or compromised people will be targeted as well for these Black Access projects. So to our military children and families.
I'm trying to decide which question I want to ask. I got so many. So I'm going to go with Barbara right here. Not being sarcastic, but I wonder what would happen if you threw rocks back. I don't know that I would want to find out. I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that they're throwing rocks, not trying to hit you, but to kind of warn you to get the hell out of wherever you're at.
For sure.
I'm thinking throwing rocks back might anger them more. I mean, I'm sure they have fantastic aim and they're aiming to not hit you. And if you're not seeing where you're throwing and you just blindly throw something, you're probably going to hit it.
Yeah.
And that might not be a good thing.
Right. Definitely a warning. The only Bigfoot Sasquatch encounter I personally have had, I owned a cabin in Bailey, Colorado, just maybe 5 miles from the Sasquatch outpost in Bailey. And so what's interesting about this encounter, it was right off the highway. So I thought, well, I'm never going to see a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch. We live right off the main highway. But what was really strange about that, I had a swing chair in the back of my little cabin, and we had just put in like a 6-foot water feature, like waterfall feature, because I wanted the sound of water. And we had just put that in. I was sitting out there waiting for my now ex-husband and my daughter to get up there and my youngest son, Tyler. And I hear like a huge knock in front of the house. And I'm like, it kind of, what was that? Right. But I didn't think Bigfoot or Sasquatch at first. But what happened after that was it was the most disgusting smell I've ever smelled in my life. It was like a dead body smell. I'm like, okay, it scared me. So I went in the house until they got there because it was just dusk when that happened. So it was dusk. And in my mind, I'm thinking, was this creature curious about the water feature we just put in or something? And then so the next day when it was daylight, I'm out there with my son and daughter looking for any evidence, hair, footprints. We couldn't find anything. It was really dry, so it wouldn't have left a track. But that's the only encounter I've ever had with a Bigfoot was that. And it was the smell. I'll never forget the smell. And it wasn't a
Interesting.
bear. I don't think it was a bear. It could have been, but I don't think it was. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe my mind was
And
just
if you
on me, but I don't know.
and you know, if you're smelling it, that would mean it would be relatively close.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of scary right there. And
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, I was scared. I'm like, I'm going inside and locking the doors. I wouldn't go back out there until they got there. So something was up.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had a Bigfoot encounter or any kind of other cryptid encounter. So I think the closest thing that I've ever been to was at, and people in chat know this, in Emmaus. Krista, my co-host on Saturday nights, who can't be here, she's out at Emmaus doing a ghost hunt. She had a recording of some kind of odd howl that she could not explain, and she has sent it to several different people, and it's come back. It's not a wolf or not anything around this area. And Emmaus is like an hour away from me in Marthasville, Missouri, so it's not far. So could it be Bigfoot, Dogman? Maybe, you know, who knows what it is. And you know, we've been out there checking it and stuff. What do you think of the reports of UFOs flying over nuclear bases? And you kind of brought this up with Ron Murphy the other night. And what do you think about the UFOs over the nuclear sites being able to turn, I guess, activate them, but not really launch them, but be able to kind of mess with the controls in the bases? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, UFO and Nukes, great book. But, you know, Francis E. Warren in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So there's a really well-known case. In my first book, I wrote Letters of Love and Light, which was basically 3 years going back and forth to the Heritage Center in Laramie, Wyoming, going through Dr. Sprinkle's 70 boxes of archives. Now I found out Richard Haynes' archives is there as well. So I've been digging through that. And there's, so I was just fascinated. I got lost in people's letters to Dr. Leo Sprinkle from around the world. I'm like so I pulled like all the juicy parts out and organized them into chapters and stuff like that. And in doing that, I came across a lot of information about Francis E. Warren, nuclear sightings, multiple sightings on radar, multiple witnesses. Fascinating case, but we're out there investigating the Carl Higdon case, and I get a phone call from a guy who lives, his family, they grew up right across from Francis E. Warren, and they had seen UFOs and crazy stuff for decades out there. And then I learned that there was another huge wave in the 80s of the same kind of thing. So do I think whatever can turn on and off our nukes? Yes, I do. There's too many really good, credible reports. And the fact that on Beyond Skinwalker, and this is where I don't know if a lot of people know, but Andy's background, Andy Bustamante on that show, he served over there in Montana and witnessed that nuclear incident and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of what sparked his interest, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's just, to me, that's just scary that something can come in and just completely overtake our bases and could wipe out humanity if they wanted to. I mean, do you think it's just kind of a warning, them showing, hey, we could do this, don't mess with us? Or,
well, interestingly enough, on Rocky Mountain Ranch now, again, I have it's the waters are muddied because of this mysterious John Duke that lived on the ranch, who claims to be part of Air Defense Command. In the reports, he talks about taking legal LSD. And then after not 2 years ago at Contact in the Desert, we interviewed a woman and her mother. her husband was deep into CIA Black Axis projects, and they owned a lot of the property over the Dulce base. And they talked about FM, which was freaking magic, which is a mixture, basically MK Ultra crap. There's evidence of MK Ultra stuff on the Rocky Mountain Ranch, right? Yeah, there is. So the waters get muddy, but this particular gentleman claimed in the reports, the APRA reports from the ranch, that there were two types of ETs seen on the Rocky Mountain Ranch. One type was the blonde, blue-eyed Nordic type, and the other type were the tubey guys that we talked about with Paul Giamatti, the wrinkled guys with the tubes and, very mechanical. In fact, if that disembodied electronic voice belonged to an ET, it would be the tubey guys. Like, it would make sense to me. But in those documents, and what I've come to kind of think in my own mind, that basically what was stated was, if you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, that these two types of ETs were in conflict with one another. And it would make sense to me that Tubby Guy kind of went the way of AI, artificial intelligence. And you hear about that with the Greys, very robotic little Greys. And then the Nordics are more sentient. They didn't go the way of AI. And maybe that's what the conflict is about. What's interesting to me about that is, and you talk about the nukes and everything, and it ties into that, I think we're being observed, and to see where we're going to go. Are we going to go Neuralink? Are we going to merge with AI? Are we going to go into the big singularity? What's going to happen? Is it going to be a split off with some people stay this way and some people go that way? I don't know, but I kind of feel like that would make some sort of sense to me. That could be what their conflict is about. And maybe that's why they're kind of watching us. I do feel if they do have that capacity to just wipe us out, I mean, this has been going on for. We can't stop them, and we've been okay for 70 plus years, or maybe thousands of years if they were back here in antiquity. So far we're doing okay. I think we're more of just a curiosity to them. Let's see what these guys are going to do. Now, if it came to the point we're going to destroy our planet outright, and we're going to start nuking at each other, and I think they care about our planet, not us. I think to us, they're like, "Ooh, we're curious about these guys. What are they going to do?" But I think they wouldn't let us destroy Earth. Whatever that means for us, I don't know. But
I guess depending on the day and my mood, I'm kind of all over the place with this. I kind of think sometimes that it's, us from the future coming back and saying, no, don't do this, no, okay, you're on the right course now, get back on track. And then other times it's, are these beings really from stars far, far, far away? I mean, possible wormhole could be right here too. I mean, the Skinwalker Ranch is proved that. Well, they haven't proved it, but they've shown possibilities for that. And, things coming in and out of lakes and oceans and stuff, who knows? Like I've always said, what better place to hide than in the ocean, where no one has ever really investigated much.
Right. And I love this thing that David Pilates talks about too. Oh, thanks again, Pam. One thing I love that David Pilates talks about on the Missing 411, the UFO connection, he talks about the Higdon case, and he talks about aquifers. So after he kind of talked about that, I was curious about the aquifers at Rocky Mountain Ranch. And curiously enough, right where the ranch sits, two aquifers come together. One has a higher water table, one has a lower table, the Denver and the Dawson aquifer. But what's fascinating is a lot of times where these aquifers are, they open up caverns and tunnels. Another theory, right, with all the hums and bangs and sounds underground. You have NORAD, you can kind of map out from Dulce to Stapleton or Denver International Airport. It was Stapleton at the time, but so it makes me wonder about underground tunnels. It also makes me wonder about cryptids that might live underground, you hear the rumors about Dulce. So under the oceans, are they just here? You hear Hollow Earth theory, all these different theories. So I'm just like you, Paul, where it depends on the given day. Sometimes I'm like, it's all the military, or and then other times, because then you have these incredible cases from very credible pilots and people, and you're like, okay, there's more to this.
And perhaps it's a mixture of all this stuff. I mean, who knows? And other days I'm like, you know what, forget it. I just want to watch sports and go to sleep, whatever.
Right.
We in the last 10 minutes that we have here with Katie, we can see you as well on some old episodes of Small Town Monsters. That's where I first discovered you or found you on the little roundtable discussion panel with Ron Murphy, Micah Hanks. Who else is on there? Heather Mosier was on there, and there's one more I'm missing. Two more I'm missing. Who's the host? But that was such
Aaron Deese is the host.
Aaron Deese is the host, and the other one I can't think of the other guy's name. Oh my god! But anyway, that was such a UFOs Revisited. I forgot that too. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. But I mean, it was such a great little series that you guys did. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and an interesting thing about how it was all filmed.
Yeah. I mean, that was a fun little trip and a great roundtable. And I love that they brought kind of, Ron Murphy with his cryptids and, they brought different disciplines in. And I love that because I think that's so needed in this field. For me personally, it was a little bit of a challenge because every episode was a deep dive on my favorite one is the Men in Black. That was a good one. All of them are really good, but some of them I had to do some homework on. And then what's challenging for me personally was it was hard to balance my opinions because like you, Paul, sometimes I'm not overly there's certain cases that I have a hard time. It's a reach for me to believe some of it. And I think all of us kind of had that challenge. It was filmed in this beautiful theater. Beautiful. It was amazing. But it was hard to find that balance because certainly I'm open to everybody's experiences. And a big part of me now with the whole, are we living in this kind of matrix kind of thing? Are we manifesting? And if that's true, if we're in a virtual kind of reality kind of situation, then it kind of anything goes, right? So I can't dismiss outright if that's the case. But it was challenging to kind of find that middle ground of being respectful. I'm always respectful of everybody. And I have an ear and I listen and I consider it. So I found that challenging, but I love that they opened it up like that. And it's one of the few shows out there that really did that. Like Aaron Deese did a good job of saying, well, he kind of like what AJ does on Y-Files. Like, here's the facts, but is it true? And here's why it might not be. You guys decide. And they kind of did that in a sense where we just had this roundtable discussion and kind of here's what we know about it. Here's what we think about it. And now you guys make your own minds up. And I love that kind of platform, really. It's good. It puts it in the individual's hands and let them kind of look at all the evidence. So yeah, it was fun.
What did you do before you got into all this stuff? Because you seem you're a very meticulous researcher. I mean, you try and uncover it as much as you can. You're very thorough.
Thank you. Well, I nobody's ever asked me that question before. Believe it or not, nobody.
Really?
Yeah, nobody. So I worked with ILC kids in middle school and behavior disorder kids in high school and middle school for a while. So I worked in the school district. I also raised 5 children of my own. They're all grown now. I have 2 beautiful grandkids. And so I was a bartender for a while, just a short while. Yeah, and then I got my degree in visual communication, so graphic design. So I worked for Travel Host magazine. You know when you go to the hotels and you would see the maps of all the hot spots?
Oh yeah.
I designed those maps, and that's very intricate and detail oriented. So I did that for a while.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was picturing some kind of 3-letter agency where police department where you had to research all these criminals or something. I don't know.
Oh no.
But, I mean,
I don't like courthouses, hospitals, or police stations.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you on all those.
Just
you had
a
comment back here.
Good.
Yeah, really, literally, stay away from the hospital. You're great. Stay away from the police station.
And the courthouse.
Congratulations on your family, Katie.
Thank you. Yeah.
Amy also said she really likes your cool background, your studio background. It is really I like
And
how
this
you did
whole
that.
wall over here is all books too. I'm just kind of a bookie. I wish I had time to read them all. It's
Yeah.
like one of those things that we'll go grab them for reference and just go to the chapters or read the, but one of these days in my later years, I'll be able to slow down. I'll have plenty to keep me busy, especially if we lose internet.
There you go.
I'm good.
Yeah, you're good for a long time. And me, I just have a couple pictures, and I don't show the mess that I have in this corner, so nobody needs
Right.
to see that.
Mine's in the closet over there. Just shut the door. Don't need to see it.
Stuff. That's right. That's why the doors are not see-through.
Right.
And once again, your Rocky Mountain Ranch research on Wednesday night, 8:00 Central, 7 Mountain. Correct? Did I get that right?
Yep. And 9 o'clock Eastern.
9 East. Okay.
Yeah. Live every Wednesday night. And next Wednesday, we have Jeff McBurney from Mount Wilson Ranch. So that's going to be a fun one. Talk about Howard Hughes.
One quick question, and I don't know how quick this will be for an answer, but you've been to a lot of places, and if you guys go to Rocky Mountain Ranch Research Podcast, you'll see that she's been to a lot of different places and interviews and research and stuff. Is there one or two places that you have not been that you would like to go?
Yes, I always wanted to do a ghost hunt on one of these these old ships. What is the one in California that's said to be really haunted? The aircraft carriers and things like that. Yeah, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to do because I just love those old ships anyway. My dad and my grandfather were both Navy, so I'm like, oh, that would be cool. The penitentiaries and
Queen Mary.
Specifically to like my half brother was at Pueblo State, so I always had a kind of like these old mental hospitals that are abandoned. I know there's some famous ones that are said to be really haunted. That would be an interesting one. I did two different tours with ghost hunters. We went to the St. Augustine Lighthouse. That was amazing. Had unbelievable results there. And then of course did the Stanley a couple times. The ghost hunters have their like events they do. So way back in the day, kind of started in that world and then kind of shifted to the ranch. What happened at the ranch? But many places. I just like that kind of stuff. It's interesting.
Yeah. If you ever get to the Midwest area, we'll take you to Emmaus. That's an old asylum. And there's a part of it in there where a nurse actually scalded herself to death in a bathtub. Ooh. And I've been in there. Other guys have been in there. You can actually sit in the bathtub, not together, but you can actually sit in the bathtub. Nothing really happens when the guys are in there. But when the women sit in there, the place goes crazy.
So. That's nuts. You know what? So with my ex-husband, one year for our anniversary, he got us a night stay in the Stephen King room at the Stanley. And okay.
Oh.
So what's funny is, and this could be why we're divorced, I don't know, but we're there and I'm all excited. I have all my equipment and all this stuff. He takes a nap. And I'm just like, we're in the Stephen King room and you're taking a nap. So I was bored for like a couple hours. And of course, at the Stanley Hotel, people will come and get their pictures right in front of the door, right? The famous Stephen King room. And I would stand by the door and wait for somebody to come and I'd rattle the chain or shake the handle. And I was good friends.
I love that.
I was good friends with the ghost tour person at the Stanley at the time. And I'm like, I have a confession to make. And she loved it. She's like, the guests love it. But in that bathroom, in the Stephen King room, there's that tub. And I'm like, there is no way I'm going to be able to take a bath in that tub. It's a Stephen King room. Forget about it. You know what I did? And nothing happened. I was surprised. Yeah. So I can say I checked that off my bucket list. But yeah, that was a pretty fun thing to do. So
That's
bad.
Awesome. That's awesome. That I love that story. That's something that I would do.
It was funny. It was funny.
Well, Katie, thank you so much. This has been a very, very quick 90 minutes. I really appreciate you coming on here again. And I love hearing your research and I love hearing you tell your stories. And guys, go over and make sure you subscribe to Rocky Mountain Ranch Research.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Awesome. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Anytime. You're always welcome here. All right, guys. Have a great night. Thank you all for watching. Donny Cho's coming on here in about, where am I at? Oh, he's probably started. And then make sure you check out BMR at 11 o'clock Central over on his channel with Late Night with the Girls and stuff. So everybody have a great, safe weekend. We will see you Tuesday. I have Lady Anne Celine on Tuesday night, so make sure you check in for that one. So everybody have a great night, and we will see you later. Thanks again, Katie.
Thank you.
Are you ready to see what lies beneath the ever-thinning veil of the unknown? Book your craft now for the Crossing Realms Conference September 19th and 20th in Richmond, Missouri.
This is the future.
This unprecedented experience allows you to not only hear and interact with a cornucopia of highly respected researchers, scientists, and experiencers, it will shape the very foundations of your reality. You will lay witness to some of the best evidence collected in decades.
This is the future.
Be a part of history in the making. Get your tickets now at eventbrite.com. The Crossing Realms Conference, where the paranormal becomes normal.